Okay, gewaltig. We're up to the Mishnah on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Noisnin Karfaf Le'ir. Divi Reb Meir. Every city, its limits aren't by its wall. It has a little area around the city that's also considered part of the city. And that's the Karfaf that's added on to every city. The Chachamim Maimrim, that's the Reb Meir Shita. The Chachamim Maimrim, Lo Omer Karfaf Ella Bein Shtei Ayoros. A city's limits are a city's limits. You don't give it any extra room. But if there's two cities that are nearby and we want to fuse them into one big city so that anybody in any of these two cities, their mokum now becomes the area of both cities, im yesh lezu shivim ama v'shirayim, ulezu shivim ama v'shirayim, oisa karfef eshtein liyos echad. If each of the two cities have this area around them that will give them, that works out to 70 amas and a bit, and the two cities, their areas intersect. So we take one city and it has this area around it that's about 70 amas, a strip around it. Same thing with the neighboring city. If those two strips intersect, we say it's one big city. That's how the Gemara learns in the Havamina. The Gemara is going to end up changing shot in the Mishnah. Again, I'm going to learn like the Havamina of the Gemara. If you have three cities lined up in a row, just like a traffic light, red, yellow, and green. If between the red light and the green light, there's 141 and a third, which is 2 times the distance of a karfaf, 2 times the 70 aman shirayim, then then the yellow light, the center one, will fuse the two. This is a little bit difficult to understand. If the two outer ones are close enough together, why do you need yellow? Why do you need the middle one? And this is what the Gemara is going to go discuss. Let's see the Gemara. How do we know that there's even such a concept that you consider a strip of 70 amas around the city as part of the city? Amar Rava said, the Amar Kra, the Pasuk says, and let's read the Pasuk inside. Umigrishe arm, asher titnu lavim, mikir ha'ir v'chutza elaf ama. From the wall of the city and outside it. So we darshan, mikir ha'ir v'chutza, amar Torah, tein chutza. First, take the kir of the wall of the city. Then take the chutza, which is the karfif. And then after the karfif, and only then do you start counting and measuring the 2,000 amas. So, in other words, the karfif, the little strip of land around the city, up to 70 and somewhat amas, we consider as part of the city. The Chachamim Amru, and the Chachamim say, Loi Amru, we don't say that there's a karfif unless there's two cities. So one city by itself, in the middle of nowhere, its city limits are its city limits. And from the wall of the city, or from the limits of the city, you count 2,000 amas, and that's your tchum. You don't have this extra leeway of approximately 70 amas. But if there's two cities that you want to combine them, then we'll use a karfif to say that they overlap and they're one big city. Zok the Gemara. Chiba Rav learns, karfif echad l'shtein. You cannot have 140 amas in between the two cities and fuse them. The two cities have to be within 70 and somewhat amas of each other, within 70 amas of each other. Otherwise, you will not fuse them. So Chiba Rav Omer karfif echad l'shtein. The Chachamim loy Omer karfif elabein beis ayoros. The Chachamim say that you only have karfif between two cities. So the problem is, I apologize, I didn't read this right. Abuna says that when you have two cities, if they're 140 amas apart, you'll fuse them together because each has that extra 70 amas. And the two cities have to be within 70 of each other. So we go back to the Mishnah Tanan. Loy Amru Karfif Alabain Beis Ayoris. The Chum say you only have one Karfif in between two cities. That would indicate that the two cities, in order for them to be fused as one, they have to be within 70 amas of each other. One Karfif, one area of 70 amas between two cities. Tiyuf to Darafuna. This would be a steer to Rapuna who holds that you have 140 amas in between the cities and you can still fuse them together. Omulach Rapuna, my karfif, Torah's karfif. When it says karfif, it means the concept of karfif. Meaning, if there's the concept of karfif in between two cities, we can use the karfif to join the two cities. But exactly how much space is involved, that's not discussed. Ul karfif lazu, karfif lazu. Maybe the amount of space you give them is 70 amis for each of the two cities. Hachinami mistaper. And that's the logical way to learn the Mishnah, because if you read the next line in the Mishnah, it practically says that beferish. Yitikatani seifa, imesh lezu ayinam of v'shirayim, ulezu ayinam of v'shirayim. If you give 70 and a little bit to each side, and then those two areas overlap, oisa karpov l'shteyen or l'shneim liyoisechot. So that pretty much says that if they're 140 amas apart, we'll use the two karfifs to join them, which is exactly like what Rafuna said. Noisen karfif l'zu, karfif l'zu. Shemami no, you have a raya like Rafuna. Fact the Gemara, if that's the case, lemot tahava to yufta d'chir barav. Now it's going to be shren chir barav, who said that they have to be within 70 amas of each other. Yet the Mishnah seems almost to say the farish that they can be within 140 amas of each other. Orman Chir barav. Chir barav can answer that this comment in the Mishnah is not connected to the Chachamim. When the Mishnah says "Em yesh lezu shivim ama v'shirayim, ulezu shivim ama v'shirayim, oisa karfif eshtei and liyos echad," that's not the Chachamim talking. Rather, Zok the Heilig Gemara, Hamani Reb Meir. That's Reb Meir talking, who gives an individual city, even if you're not trying to connect it to another city. Even one city alone in the wilderness has the karfif of 70 amas. Frek the Gemara, Reb Meir, if this part of the Mishnah is Reb Meir talking, well, Atani Laresha. We already learned Reb Meir Shita in the Resha. Noiten karfif le'ir, divi Reb Meir. If I already know a city standing by itself in the middle of nowhere has the karfif connected to it, so if I have two cities that are side by side, they'll each have their own karfif, and naturally, if the two karfifs overlap, it will be considered one city. So why would Reb Meir have to express both halachas in the Mishnah? One halacha is that each city individually has its own karfif, and B, if there's two cities together, they each have their own karfif. It's one and the same. You need both these halachas. The imeahi, if we only had the first Reb Meir in the Mishnah, that said if one city is standing independently, its city limits only begin after the 70 yama strip around it, well, havamina chad lechada v'chad latarte. You have one area of 70 amas around each city, but even if you have two cities together, they have to share in that 70 amas. And in order to fuse two cities together, you need them to be within 70 amas of each other. Kamash malon, the latarti trey yavinan lahu, that if there's two cities, they each have their 70 amas, and if they're within 140 amas of each other, their areas are considered to have been overlapped, and they're fused into one city, and therefore they all share one big tchum. But v'yashmin halacha, if Reb Meir would have only told us the second halacha, that two cities that are within 140 amas of each other are considered one, I would have said, yes, when there's two cities close together, the karfif counts. We should the tchicha tashmisayu, because two cities that are close together, the area in between them would be too crowded and congested, because both cities are accessing that area. So we give each city its own defined 70 amas. Abul Hassan, but if you're one individual city in the middle of nowhere, like tchicha tashmisayu, there is no issue of congestion around it. And therefore, there's no need to designate any strip of land around it to be part of the city. Emaloi, you might say, wouldn't have that halach of karfif, and a city that's standing alone in the middle of nowhere, you measure the 2,000 amas of the tchum from the wall of the city, and you don't give it any 70 amas strip around. That's why Reb Meir had to say his halacha both if there's a standalone city, like in the ratio of the Mishnah, and when there's two cities together, they each have their own area of 70, and if those two areas overlap, we fuse them into one city. Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. V'chein shloisha kfarim hamishuloshin. Now we're learning like we learned in the Havamina. You have three cities that are like a traffic light, a red, a yellow, and a green, sitting in a row. Im yesh ben shnayim achitzonim meya v'arboim v'achas ama ushlish. If between the red and the green there is 141 am and a third amis, then oisa emtsoi eshloshton liyois echad. The yellow in the middle will allow them to fuse together. So let's think about this. The Mishnah seems to say that the only reason why these two cities are fused as one, even though they're within 140 amos of each other, is only because there's a third city in the center that joins them. If there was no city in the center that joins them, we would not say that they join, even though they're within 140 amos of each other. This is shver on Rabhuna. Tiyufta der Rabhuna. This would be inconsistent with Rabhuna. Amar Chavuna, you have Ram Pshat in the Mishnah. These three cities are not in a row like a red, yellow, and green light. These cities aren't really three in a row. Rather, it's in the shape of a segol. Two cities that are side by side, and the one that's offset below the two. But it's centered in between the two cities. I have two cities that are far apart. I have a city that's lined up to in between them, but it's not in between them. It's removed like a segol, like three circles in a triangle shape. So you look at it, and if I would shift that city in between the two cities that are parallel, if you would shift the city that's not in line with them and put it right in between the two cities, and then they would have three in a row. And then in between each of the cities, between the red and the yellow and the green, there would be not more than 141 amos and a third. Then then the center one, which is not really in the center, it's offset, but we make believe that it's in the center, it will be able to join the two cities. A huge chiddush. These two cities are far apart, but I can imagine and I can shift the third city that's lined up in between them, in between them, that it should be in line with them. I imagine that it's there, and that allows all the cities to join and fuse, and they're one big Eruv. Amalei Rav Abaye. How much space is there allowed to be between the outer one and the middle one? So we'll use our traffic light. You have the red over here, you have the green over here, and you have the yellow down in the center. How much distance is there allowed to be between the green and the yellow, and in between the red and the yellow? Amrlai alpayim amma. The maximum distance that you can allow is 2,000 amos. And Rashi says the reason why is because hoyel v'yochal lavoy mizulazu below erev. Since if they're within 2,000 amos of each other, you'd be able to go from the green to the yellow or from the red to the yellow. They're like connected. Fact to Gemara, why would you say that? The ha'atu the amrit kavosi the rava barei the rabba barafuna. In the case of a city that was in the shape of a horseshoe, where Abaye said that he was like Rabba Barafuna, and there was a shaila, if the imaginary string that runs across from one side of the horseshoe, the other side of the horseshoe, even if it's more than 2,000 amos away from the base of the horseshoe, we still say that you can use it, because anybody in the horseshoe can walk around to one of the legs of the horseshoe to get to that string. That's what you said, Abaye. Well, atu the amrit kavasi the rava barei the rava barafuna mistavra the amar Yosy me alpayim amma. That even if you're more than 2,000 amos, you'll still allow us to measure the city from that string. So let's have a look. What Abaye said is, even if there's more than 2,000 amas from this imaginary string to where the houses are here in the horseshoe, we still allow this to be the tchum, the end of the city, and you measure the tchum from here. Even people living here who are more than 2,000 amas from this string, we still say that their city limit will be here, and they can walk an additional 2,000 amas past this string. That's what Abaye said. And he said it because people can walk around on either side to get to that string. So if that's the case, that 2,000 amas should not be applicable to these either. Even if this middle city is more than 2,000 amas from A and C, so even if the yellow light is more than 2,000 amas from the red light and from the green light, it should still be connected and it should still be able to fuse the cities. Zakti Gemara, Hachi Hashta, Hasam Ikabatim. There you have houses all the way around. But Hacha Lekabatim. Here it's wide open. There are no houses connecting them. So therefore here 2,000 amas will be the limit. Zok Gemara, Hasam Ikabatim Bekeshes. The entire horseshoe is inhabited with homes. Ador Bekeshes, anyone who lives in this city that's in the shape of a horseshoe, Yochalovo L'Rosheh Derech Batei Keshes. So the guy living here, even though he can't go straight across because it's more than 2,000 amas, but he can get there from here and he can get there from here. Therefore, we consider this all one big city. However, in this case, there are no houses here. So there's no way for the yellow light to get to the red or to the green if it was more than 2,000 amas away. There are no homes. And therefore, it's limited to 2,000 amas. Zok the Gemara weiter. Rav asked Abaye another question. How much is the maximum space you would allow between the red light and the green light? In fact, what type of question is that? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much space there is. No matter how even if it's 10,000 amas. All that counts is if I would shift that yellow light in line between the red and the green, and as long as when I shift that yellow city in between the red and the green, it fills up enough space that there's not a gap in between the yellow and the green or the yellow and the red of more than 141 amas, even if it was 4,000 amas, you're not limited because all that counts is once you shift the yellow in between the red and the green, the gap in between the yellow and the red and the yellow and the green shouldn't be more than 141. So it's not relevant to me, the distance between the red and the green. Amalayin. Yes. So Nachamal. Kol shil machlim soy b'neim ve'im ben zelazeh elameya v'arbaim v'achal shlish afil dalal of mama. Amalayin, you're right. But for Amar Rav Huna said, Ir har asuya kakeshes, going back to the city that's made like a horseshoe. We said in Yesh bein beis Roshah pachas marbos alafim ama moididna min hayeter from the string from lav moididim la min akeshes. By the horseshoe, we said that if there's more than 4,000 amas between the two legs of the horseshoe, you cannot measure, you cannot enclose, you cannot measure the tchum from this imaginary bowstring and out 2,000 amas. Rather, you lose this open area and you got to measure from here. So if that's the case, since it's more than 4,000 amas, you don't have the inside. So oibazoi, why even if A and C are 4,000 amas apart, can B come and fill it? If nothing can fill this space, if it's more than 4,000 amas, why do we say that B can fill the space between A and C if there's more than 4,000 amas? You count from the string and out. That's the edge of the city. But if it's more than 4,000 amas, you count from here. So how could you allow such a big gap between the two cities, the red and the green, even though the yellow would fill it up. But right now, it's too far apart. On Malay, there's a very big difference. And this teretz is a very difficult teretz. There's different pshatim in it from the Rishonim. I'll share with you Rashi's pshat and one of Tosfos' pshatim, but it's still a little shverach. He said, Amalei Halsam Lekal Meimar Mali. There by the Keshes, you cannot say that we would fill this in. Mashek and Hacha, when it comes to the three cities, Ikalam Mali, you can say you fill it in. Why? So let's look at Rashi. Rashi is Lekal Meimar Malyua, Malay Ha'aver Shebenem. You won't say to fill the dead space in between the horseshoe. The Einlach B'Mala Malosi. You don't have anything to fill it with. A little bit difficult. So Rashi says, so the Ritva explains that what Rashi means is, if you were adding on to this city, you would not put houses in here. The design of this city, the city planner would not allow you to put houses here. If you want to extend the city, he would tell you to extend the two legs of the horseshoe. So therefore, you don't say that we consider this being full of houses because it's not even in the plans. If this city is going to expand, the legs of the horseshoe will be continued. However, in the case of the three cities, if any of these cities expand, there's nothing stopping them. B will grow, C will grow, A will grow, and they'll overlap. So therefore, we consider it fused in one big city, even though A and C are more than 4,000 amas apart. That's how Rashi learns. Tosfos learns a little differently. Tosfos learns that in the case of the horseshoe, we're talking about the fellow who lives here. This fellow who lives here, we want to say that it's as if he lives over here and he can get 2,000 amas from here. The problem is if we take this fellow from here and we place him here, sure, he'll benefit that he can go further in this direction. But if he's here, it's diminished how much he can go in that direction. So he wouldn't want to do that. So therefore, we don't move this guy because it doesn't benefit him. It might benefit him from one side, but it hurts him on the other side. However, here, we're not looking at where this guy is. We're looking to join A and C. C wants to be able to walk 2,000 amas past A, and A wants to be able to walk 2,000 amas past C. We want them to be fused. So for these two to be fused, we can make believe this is down here. Now, this guy doesn't lose anything by that. Because when we're looking at B, like B himself, anyone who lives in B remains in B. And he has 2,000 amas this way, 2,000 amas that way, 2,000 amas this way, and 2,000 amas that way. His tchum is not being affected. But from their perspective, they don't care if he's moved into here, because from their perspective, all they want to do is get from here to here. They don't care if they impact where this guy can move. So therefore, like A and C, B could be right here in between without impacting anything. Like B himself, B doesn't move. Mashenkin over here, our dimun is on the people who live here, how far they can go. If we want to let them go 2,000 amas past this string, meaning we consider that they live here, they're going to be losing the 2,000 amas on the other side. So that's how Rashi learns with the Ritva's explanation, and that's how Tosfos learns. Zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Hele Gemara weiter. Omelei Rab Safra l'Rava. Rab Safra told Rava, Hani b'nei Akistafon, the Meshchin l'Tchoma mehagisa the Ardashid. There were two cities. There was Akistafon and there was Ardashid. And Akistafon was on the one side of the Tigris River in Babel in Iraq, and Ardashir was on the other side of the Tigris River. And Akistafon and Ardashir considered themselves as one city, even though they were on opposite sides of the river. So if I was on Akistafon on one side of the river, I would have no problem crossing the river, going through the city of Ardashir, and continuing on 2,000 amas past Ardashir, because I consider Akistafon and Ardashir as one big city. So these people from Akistafon, the Meshchin l'Tchuma mehagis the Ardashir, uvenei the Ardashir, and the people of Ardashir, Meshchin l'Tchuma mehagis the Kistafon. They consider themselves one city with the Kistafon, so they'll walk 2,000 amas past the Kistafon. How could they possibly do that? Hoika Diglis, the Mafsaka. We have the Tigris River that's in between these two cities, and the Tigris River itself is wider than 141 and a third amma. Yeser mimeya barboim v'achos ushlish. So the river is much bigger than even the two Karfifs. So clearly these two cities are separated more than we could possibly allow them to merge. So how could these two cities consider themselves as one city? So Rava said, "Come with me. I want to show you something." And he took him to the riverbank. Novak, they went out. Actually, he showed them Hanach at Ma'asa the Shuri. He showed them remnants of old stone walls that were in the middle of the river. The Mivli B'Diglis that were in the river. Ba'ayin Amavishurayim. That was a maximum distance of 70 amas and a bit. In other words, the cities on either side once extended into the river, and they in fact were walls that were old homes or part of the wall of the city that was actually in the river. So the city doesn't end at the riverbank. The city really ends when your buildings end. And in fact, there were buildings every 70 amas or so, or remnants, old walls, remnants of buildings, every 70 amas or so, which in fact fused the two cities together. And it was even able to traverse a river. Two cities are considered one city, even though there's a river in between them. They're considered one big city. And let's stop over here. And now we're right up to date. And tomorrow's daf, which is Tuesday's daf, is going to be daf nun ches. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful